There we go. Right. And truth be told, I don't remember exactly where we left off, and I was going over some of the recordings to find um the
Oh, yeah.
last spot. But
We're
I
in
believe, yeah.
paragraph 109, which goes for a couple pages. We were like,
Okay, I thought so. Perfect. Wow. Okay, we're near the end. We're nearing the end of the first essay, and I believe we're gonna have this done. I believe we'll have this done by Hanukkah, if even that long. So, very exciting to finish such a large piece of Torah with you. Now, paragraph 109, excuse me, starts off with the rabbi responding to the Kuzari's accusations, or claims rather, I should say, of the rewards promised by the other religions of the world are more concrete than or more realistic, or more, what does he say? That they're more grandiose and richer and more bountiful than the claims that Judaism makes, i.e., the claims of Islam are very visceral. We understand what we're receiving in the world to come. The claims of Christianity, I believe Jesus claims it says in the Gospels that there's a mansion set aside for every follower of his in his kingdom of heaven. Excuse me. But what can Judaism, what is Judaism offering to us? What is Judaism offering to what is Judaism offering to give to the faithful? It's faithful in the afterlife. Um, so the rabbi says, and I'm just recapping. I don't have the text up yet. I'm just recapping here because we're not going to look at this part of the text. That the other religions, their rewards only come after death. But in Judaism, we experience the rewards also in this plane of existence, in the here and now. And this is getting into the ideas of sechar ve'onesh, how we translate in how we translate in English, reward and punishment. Now, anyone who's praised Shahrit every morning, they might be familiar with a small paragraph that we read in the preliminary prayers, not even in really Shahrit itself, so maybe it could be easily skipped. But it's a paragraph that starts Elo Debarim. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? It's a Mishnah from Masehet Peah. Actually, why don't I share it? Huh? Let's do that. Let's see here. Let me find where's my internet? There we go. Let's cancel that. Oh, you can't see. Let me share, sorry. Here we go. So let's go to Mehon Mamre. It's like Safari, except it's easier for me to navigate Mehon Mamre for whatever reason than it is for me to navigate Safari, even though Safari is very user friendly. So not a programming error, it's a me error. Let's see here, Mishnah, Peah, and I believe it is the first, yeah, right here. Elu dabarim she'en lehem shi'ur. These are these things in life, or these the actions. They don't have a shi'ur, meaning there's no measure to it. There's no maximum cap, and there's no real minimum either. But obviously, the minimum is one. Like you can't give like less than the thing here. So it's talking about hapeya ve'bikorim ve'harayon. That is to say, the peah is the corners of the field that you leave over for the poor, right? If you remember in the book of Ruth. Ruth goes to glean in Boaz's field, and the things that she is gleaning is this payah, also leket and parrot. There's other things that are being gleaned, but this is just the most commonly known one. It's the corners of the field that you leave over for the poor to come and pick themselves. V'habikurim v'harayon. So bikurim, that's the first fruits that you bring to Jerusalem There's no, you can bring as many as you want. Harayon is interesting because it's the pilgrimage festival, right? Or it's not, excuse me, not the festival. It's the pilgrimage offering that you bring. So seemingly there is a shiur. You can only bring 3 a year, but the amount that you do bring while you're there, that has no limit to it. Okay. Gimilot hasadim, there's no limit to good kindness. It's not like you can do your one good deed for the day, even though people do say that's my one good deed for the day. There's many opportunities for good deeds in the world, and there's no time to stop. V'talmud Torah, and learning Torah. There's no cap. There's no end to learning Torah. Okay, that's just the introduction. Now let's get to what I really want to talk about. Ve'elu debarim she'adam ochel מפירותיהן בעולם הזה והקרן קיימת לעולם הבא. כיבודה וגמלו חסדים ואהבת שלום בין האדם לחברו בתלמוד תורה כנגד כולם. So here's what I want to point out. These items, אלו דברים שאדם אוכל מפירותיהן בעולם הזה. It doesn't talk anything about sechar or reward, but it says you eat its fruits in this world, meaning you benefit from this right now. If you were to engage in these mitzvot, you benefit from these mitzvot. And not only that, this sort of principle, I don't know how to translate Karen other than principle. Does that make sense, Yoram? Karen as principle? Like in a financial situation sense? Yeah? Okay.
It's like the current income, which is...
Yeah. Okay. It is kayemet leolam haba. Kayemet is an interesting word. It doesn't just only mean to sustain or last. It means to be certified in this sense, I believe. Certified as in like a banking situation. And I think we're already using the terminology here of banking, keren, kayemet, in order to provide a parable or metaphor of looking at how this works. Means that it certifies the world to come. It certifies whatever that means. Let's say that it means heaven for now, just to simplify things. And those things are kibbutz ve'em, gimor hasadim, v'havat shalom ben adam lehavero. Some versions say ve'ish ve'ishto, husband and wife. That's not in the original Mishnah. Talmud Torah keneged kulam, and the study of Torah is keneged kulam. Now, keneged kulam does not mean equal to all of them, right? That's shaveh or shakel. And if you were put things on a scale, they would be evenly weighed, like it says in Pirkei Avot with Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. But here, Keneged Kulam means that these actions, honoring parents, kindness, bringing peace between people, Talmud Torah is the gateway to these actions. Meaning when you do these actions via the lens of learning Torah, you learn the principles, you learn our laws, you can then appropriately accomplish these tasks. They're not accomplished incorrectly. In some versions of the Mishnah, it includes Bikur Holim in this list, right? And I use that one as the example. It's not in this list, but in other versions of another Girsaot, other texts, the Bikur Holim is included, visiting the sick. And the reason I think it's a good example is that if you visit the sick, but you have no idea what you're doing, you can do more damage to that sick person than you could if you didn't know what you're doing. Meaning, if you go to that sick person and you say, "Do you know why you're sick? It's because of your many sins, and God is punishing you, and therefore, yeah, that no. The Torah would teach you to do the opposite. When you go there, you pray with them, you clean for them, you ask them their well-being, you cheer them up. But that is that Torah teaches that. So when you do it via the vehicle of Torah, it's good. But the
Can I ask
Eleanor,
something,
Eleanor, go ahead. Yes, please.
this is good. I know this sounds a little weird, but let's say that a person doesn't read Torah, doesn't learn Torah from anybody teaching them that, and doesn't say it to them, but they know from their parents, from others, they know that they should be kind, they should treat their parents well, they should visit the sick and do it in a good way, and they do all these things. Aren't these mitzvot just as good as if you learned it through the Torah?
So I would say it like this. I think when a person, let's say a Jewish child, let's just limit it in the scope to just Jewish people for now, and then we'll talk about non-Jews in a second. The Jewish child, they don't have a formal Torah education, but they learned these things from watching their parents or from instruction from there. That also I consider to be Talmud Torah. I have a teacher, a rabbi, who says that he learned more from his grandparents than he has from any yeshiva. His grandparents aren't big, Talmidei Chachamim. They grew up in Yemen. They were simple, and they're not like they're like not intelligent. Meaning they had a simple life in Yemen. They moved to Israel. They were simple people in Israel. But he feels that he learned more Torah from just being around his grandparents than he has from any of his yeshiva programs, from any of his smicha, from any of the rabbis that he learned how to become a rabbi with. That's because Talmud Torah is more than just opening up a sefer, opening up a book and reading it. Talmud, in general, I believe, is an analytical approach to the Torah and understanding that Torah, that life isn't confined to a book, but that life you find all around you. And how to interact with that life you find from the examples around you. So this Jewish child who's good to their parents, good to sick people, cares about peace, and then learn it from a book, they still learned it via Torah, because they learned it via instruction from their parents or instruction of those around them. So that's one thing. Non-Jews, it's a whole other question. And it has to do with we don't judge non-Jews by our religion. So if they have a different approach to things, we respect their approach to things. We respect their opinions, we respect their beliefs, although we will disagree with them, but we will respect them. And so if I'm not gonna say something like it's impossible for a non-Jew to be a morally good person without Torah. I don't think so. I think that they have their own codes of morality and their own approaches to morality, and and they can learn it that way as well. I mean, the Gemara goes so far to say that if there wasn't a Torah, we would learn modesty from the cats, because cats are very modest in their approach to how they go to the bathroom, this and that. They're clean, things like that, and so people can learn a lot from the world around them as well. And I think that's a version of Talmud Torah. All right. So, what the reason I brought up this Mishnah was to show what the Haber is talking about. He's saying this line right here is the important part. We benefit from the Torah in this world. We don't promise castles and feasts and virgins and whatever it is that the other religions promise. We promise shalom in this world and closeness to God in the world to come, whatever that means. And that's we're gonna table that. We'll come back to it. Let me stop this share and let me reshare, so you don't have to see my face. Let's do here. Right? Yes, this one. Okay. Now let's get back into 109, where the Kuzari. Yes. Oh, I do have the text. Look at that. Wow. Okay. So the Kuzari then challenges the rabbi, and we've gone over that. The Haver, the rabbi, reminds the Kuzari of the prophetic experience, and says that what if there was like a person who experienced these angelic spectacles, meaning the prophetic experience, and the Kuzari says that this person would want to separate his soul from the physical, and this person would desire death. So if the prophetic experience is really so wonderful that anyone who really truly experiences God and talks to God, they would not want to be in this world anymore, and it would become like a death cult, so to speak. We would now then try to strive towards returning to death. Okay, so now, Amar Haver. Aval Yudeinu v'hidbagenu b'inyan ha'elohi b'nevuah ma shehu karov la. So the guarantees of reward in our religion are not related to an afterlife. Rather, they are our bonding to divinity. The reason I said it in Hebrew first is because I like the Hebrew better. It says Elohi b'nevuah ma shehu karov laha. This nivuik, that's not a word, but this prophetic experience, this is coming close and bonding with divinity. And this is through prophecy and near prophecy. Near prophecy is what we would call Ruach HaKodesh, someone who is a Hasid in the classical sense, not in the modern sense, is considered Karov Laha, closer to God, in the sense that they are closer in prophetic vision. So, and the attachment of divinity to our people with grandeur, glory, and wonders. So it's not only on the individual level, but there's an attachment to the Am Yisrael in general, to this prophetic experience that is natural, so to speak, to all of us. Accessible, I should rather say. Not only is it natural, it's natural, meaning that it's something that's easily accomplished for a Yehudi. It's accessible to the Jewish people. And there's an interesting argument, I'll bring it up here, that how some people read this. And the idea is that only the Jewish people can attain prophecy in the way that we have, and that non-Jews cannot attain prophecy. And the issue with that view is that we do see non-Jews who've attained prophecy. Noah is a good example. We just read last parasha. Avraham, Bilam is a great example. Avraham Avinu is a great example. The prophet Obadiah is a good example. Prophet Obadiah is a convert, according to one version of the Gemara. He converted from the people of Edom, and then once he converted to Judaism, he would go on to rebuke Edom. He would go back and he would say to Edom, "Don't, you're brothers with the Jewish people, correct your behavior." However, there is a version of the Gemara that does not include that story, and it seems that story was included by somebody else, so it's not sure whether or not Obadiah was or was not a prophet. The point is that I don't think it matters whether, not a prophet, a convert. But I don't think that what the Kuzari is saying here is that only the Jewish people have prophecy. I think what he's saying here is that there's an accessibility to prophecy because of our past, that it's sort of like passed down in our traditions, in our mitzvot. The way we do mitzvot brings you closer to it. That's the way I understand it. Okay. This is, and that is, he's going to continue. That is why it does not say in our Torah that if you will perform this commandment, I will bring you to gardens of pleasure after death. There's no such thing. If you read the entire Torah, it doesn't say, do this and you will receive an eternal reward in Olam Haba. What the Torah does say is that you will be a nation to me and I will be your God. That is the reward. You will be my nation. Do these mitzvot. Listen to my voice. If you read Parashat Behukotai, Behukotai tells us almost exactly these words here. If you will perform these commandments, you will be my nation and I will be your God.
Yosef?
Yeah.
In the my translation says, "You will be my chosen people, not nation." What does the Hebrew say?
Let me see here. That's a good question. I was just gonna look at that. V'atem tihu li am v'ani yeh lechem le'elohim. Now the problem is that it could have probably said chosen people, because this is a translation of a translation. And the Hebrew is a translation. And if it's quoting Behukutai, it would have been a translation into Arabic from the Hebrew, now into a translation back into Hebrew, and that translation into English. So the original could be chosen people. But I think if I remember correctly, if he's quoting the Torah, it does not say Am Segula, it says Am. You will be Am. You will be my nation.
Okay.
And then he says, and Ve'ani lechem le'elohim, and I will be unto you, God. Ve'anhig etchem, and I will drive you, lead you. I will be at the front. I will be your leader, so to speak. Meaning we'll be like, unlike any other nation where that's disconnected from God, in the sense that like a person is disconnected from the natural world around them, but we kind of will be close and in tune with God and the natural world around us. Balanced, well balanced, I think is how I would understand that. Okay. Some of you will stand. Let me see, everyone can see, yeah. Some of you will stand before me. Okay. Some of you will stand before me, and some of you will ascend to the heavens. And so this is very interesting. We're going to come up upon it in a few weeks' time with the Sulam Yaakov. And I've mentioned this many times before, but I wanted to reiterate this again. When it says you'll reach up into the heavens, and he says in parentheses here, this refers to the prophets whom used to roam among the angels. And this is why in Sulam Yaakov, the Jacob's ladder story, the angels are ascending and then descending, because they first are on earth, people. They ascend into heaven, the prophetic experience, then they descend down onto the earth again, and that's them returning to the earth to share their message. It's not just some sort of Shangri-La where they disappear from the world and they're not involved anymore. The opposite, they become more involved. Excuse me 1 second. All right. Apologies. Okay. So,
Yosef, I have another question.
yes, please.
This phrase, ascend to the heavens,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not supposed to, I don't take this literally.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you do, or if anybody else does, and how we would explain taking that literally.
So, no, don't take it literally. It doesn't mean like you will float up into heaven. That's almost a meaningless phrase that will go, because God, if it means being close to God, right? God, we know it doesn't live in a cloud in the sky. So what it means here is like this. And let me see if I can find it real quickly. Here, it's the first. It's right here in Vayeseh. Vayehalom v'hini sulam mutzavartza roshom magia hashemayma v'him Elohim olim v'yorvim bo. So the chief word here is vayehalom. He dreams. This is a dream he's having, right? It's not an actual visual that he's seeing, right? He's gone to sleep. Yaakov has gone to sleep. And then he has this dream. Now, the way we understand dreams in Tanakh is it's a prophetic vision he's having. It's not just some weird thing. It's he's having a message from God come to him right now. And what he's seeing is a sulam, a ladder or a staircase. And it's musav arza, it's on the ground, and its head is in heaven, right? It reaches into heaven. Vihine malache Elohim olim v'yordimbo. The messengers of God rise up or ascend, and then they descend on it. Let's see, is there anything worthwhile in the Ankylos? It says, "Well, silkin." Oh, no, it's a literal. It seems like it's shot for shot a literal translation mostly. Yeah.
So is it at all close to making aliyah to Israel?
It's the same word. It's the same word, 100%. Aliyah is related to this word olim, to go up. Because when you move to Eretz Israel, you go up, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's a thing. When you descend, when you move from Eretz Israel, they call it yerida. You make yerida.
So is it similar to ascend to the heavens in any sense?
And that it's the same word, but it doesn't mean like a literal ascent to the heavens. But when you do move to Eretz Israel, and we're going to see this in this next section of the Kuzari, the observance of Torah is elevated. It becomes an elevated practice. It's no longer, it's not cut off from its roots at that point. It's now connected again to where it's supposed to be being done. So when he's saying ascend to the heaven, he's using this language right here to remind us of this passage from the Bible. And it's because when a prophet has prophetic vision, he's ascending. And there's a whole section in the Moreh Nevuchim on this issue. When we say God descends to come down to us, obviously he's not obviously, but he's not coming down. There's no physical entity for God to enter into this world. So when we say God's descending, all we're doing, we're saying he's coming down here to speak with us. It's a metaphorical way of saying that we're having a what's called in Hebrew pagiyah, a meeting with God. So the same thing with the prophetic experience. If we go up to meet him. And that's why, let's go back to go ahead, Ann.
Okay, I'm just wondering, it just came into my mind, all this ascending to the heavens and everything. Is it possible that the Christian idea that Jesus ascended to the heavens after his crucifixion, does it come from this perhaps?
It's a very good question. I think for the most part, the authors of the gospel did everything in their power to disconnect, the Jesus of religion from the Jesus of history. And for that reason, they would then not really use Jewish symbols and motifs, but would rather use pagan symbolism and motifs, which have parallels to Judaism for 100%. I mean, the word we use for God, Elohim, it has a parallel to the pagan polytheistic world of there being gods with a multiple S. But Judaism, rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, it purifies, so to speak, some of the symbolic motifs of pagan humanity. But Christianity, on the other hand, they want to cleanse their symbolism of Judaism. That's why not one single originally, not one single practice of the Catholic Church had any basis in Jewish practice. They wanted to make sure they distance themselves as totally possible. So here, they do mean it literally physically ascended into the heavens and disappeared. And it's similar to a story in Egyptian culture, Egyptian religion, I should rather say, of Osiris, I think it's Osiris, who, after he is resurrected from the dead, ascends physically into the heavens, and it has a big parallel rather to that. Yes, Diane.
Don't the Christians also use the term "Son of Man," which comes, one line there, and
incorrectly.
also, I I never understood what that meant.
So
That may-
you see it right there, right?
Right, I may be ahead of you, but
No, you're like one. You're just one. You just finished the sentence. I didn't finish the sentence. But Son of Man is used by, if I believe, I'm pretty sure, Son of Man is used by the Christians in reference to Jesus. They call him the Son of Man, and that he is here to how do you call it? Fulfill the Torah or fulfill the prophecies of the Torah.
I thought he was called the Son of God.
So he is the Son of God in the okay. Let me say this in context. I'm not saying he's the Son of God. In the Gospels, he's called the Son of God, but he's also called by the title Son of Man. And I'm just looking for something I read on this very recently. I want to find. I mean, if I can't find it, I don't want to drag it on. But Son of Man is taken from Jewish prophetic writings, and it's very interesting. You can see once we understand what Son of Man means, we understand that the people who appropriated it did not understand what the Jewish use of that word was. And that's why it doesn't make any sense to the Jewish mind when they use Son of Man the way they do. We would say they use it incorrectly. But here, let me read the section here in the Kuzari, and then we'll talk about Son of Man. So we'll see here. So it says, so this refers to the prophets who used to roam among the angels. The angels referred to these prophets who used to refer to these prophets as Son of Man. That means Ben Adam in Hebrew. And right here it says right here. המלאכים וקוראים להם המלאכים בן אדם כדי להכירם בין המלאכים העומדים מתוכם. In order to differentiate between the prophets who had, elevated themselves and the actual angels, meaning that the prophets, they were in appearance, intellectually speaking, on the same intellectual level or spiritual level as these angels. So the angels would call the prophets Ben Adam, to like, oh, that's not an actual angel, that's still a person. The most famous use of Ben Adam is Ezekiel. Over and over again in the book of Ezekiel, Ezekiel is called Ben Adam. I think, if I remember correctly, Ezekiel is only called by his name twice in the entire book of Ezekiel. The rest of the time he is referred to as Ben Adam, or Son of Man, or human. That's what really Ben Adam means, human being, not Son of Man. But in the books, in the Gospels, the authors of the Gospels and of the different books of the New Testament use Son of Man to be a reference that he is the Messiah. That Son of Man is synonymous with being the Messiah. And because of that, they misquote prophecies, they misquote the Bible, they misquote many things, and they say he is truly the Son of Man. But really, to the Jewish mind, when we hear that, all that is being said is this person is simply human. That's all it means. It doesn't mean anything special. I'm Ben Adam, you're Ben Adam. It's the Hebrew version. Mensch is a Yiddish translation of Ben Adam. Menschentums means humanity. In Ladino, they would say Ben Adam, which is just Ben Adam with a Spanish accent. So all it means is human being. So anyway, my thought on why Yehezkel is called Ben Adam, it's not only because he was so high in his prophecy, he was also Kohen. And a Kohen, when they're doing their service, their work as a Kohen, they really don't have a personality. They're just a conduit. So at that point, he subsumes. That's not the correct usage of that word. He disconnects from his personal self as Yechezkel and becomes only Ben Adam, human being, as he's serving God. Diane, is your hand still up from before, or is that a new hand?
not me.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead, Albert. Carol, or is it Carol? Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did early Christians do sacrifices like we did in the temple?
Not like we did. Early Christians did a different type of sacrifice, and it was sacrifices that were taken from pagan cultures that didn't involve animals per se. It did involve blood. There's a whole interesting history to it, but it eventually found its home in what today is called the communion, where
Okay.
they reenact the Last Supper. But the important part of that, it's not really, it is a reenaction of the Last Supper, but it's like after the fact, a reenactment of the Last Supper. It has to do with eating, ingesting God and communing with him that way. And it has to do with ancient cannibalistic rituals, believe it or not. Okay.
Like blood? You mean like blood? Was
Blood and flesh. Yeah, blood and flesh.
Thanks.
So here we see that the prophet, according to the Haber, his experience of the divine is so real and so complete that even the angels have a difficulty recognizing, right? They have to remind themselves that this prophet is not an angel like us, but an angel, but he's a human being still. So they call them Ben Adam. And then he goes on to say, Gam ken melachim holchim b'neihem, that scripture also states that angels will roam among you. Now, what does that mean? And you will see them. Sometimes only one, sometimes many at a time. They will protect you and fight for you. Now, if you're a monotheist, what does any of that mean? Are we saying that there are other entities of power in this world that can come to you and protect you? You can call out to. Doesn't God do the protection? Don't we say, Shomer Yisrael? That the God is Shomer Yisrael? That we pray to God for safety? What was it talking about? Angels coming here, fighting for us, protecting us? The Kuzari here is talking again about prophets. That the prophets will roam amongst us. We will see them. We will understand who we'll see them physically because they are physical people. They're human beings. Yes, Eleanor.
I think there are angels all around us. All the people who do all these wonderful things for us all the time, they're angels.
Exactly.
So there are angels. And they're not God, but they're angels.
Exactly. Because when we remember, angelos is just the Greek word. It's for melachim. Angelos doesn't mean fiery, demigod. Angelos means messenger. It's a messenger. Angels are messengers of God. So when you do a good deed for somebody, you help somebody out, you're the hand of God in that person's life who has delivered God's mercy. And this is something that we see in the Moreh Nevuchim as well, talking about justice in the world, right? How could such terrible things happen? Like, where is the justice? How can these monsters or criminals be roaming free? The answer is, well, the court is here to implement justice, to remove this evil from the world. And that's an important thing. And that when you are actioning, that's not correct. When you are acting out a mitzvot, you are, in a sense, being God's partner in this world, in creation. That's a very, very important distinction. Thank you so much, Eleanor.
Yeah, I think it's true.
He gives examples of angels coming down. One is in Yehoshua chapter 5, verse 13. I'm just reading the right here. I'm not like memorize the Nikra, but in that section, excuse me, Yehoshua is preparing for battle, and he encounters a malach the night before the battle, and then it's a physical encounter that he's having. Okay. So he's talking about rewards, right? So what's the reward here that he's talking about? He's talking about this closeness to God. These angels are angels, they're human beings, that have become close to God because of their performance of mitzvot. And because of their performance of mitzvot, this is the reward, so to speak, the consequence, the sechar that they receive for performance of the mitzvot. That's one level, or one aspect, I should rather say. Here's a second aspect. Before we move on, any comments, questions, or concerns about what we just covered? So, but jump in whenever you want. Don't feel like the opportunity the opportunity to speak goes only when I say speak. You can jump in whenever you like. Just give me one moment. Go ahead, Anne.
Okay, you gave me the opening. I'm wondering, we have angels all around us. Can they also be people from the Noahide? They don't have to be Jews.
Yeah, I think so. In a couple weeks' time, we're going to read the story of Yosef and his brothers, and when they throw him into the pit, right? And first, Yosef goes to the field to meet his brothers there, but they're not there. They left. They went somewhere else. So he could have easily missed out and has gone back home. But then a man appears and tells Yosef, "Oh no, your brothers went to such and such a place." So this person wasn't a Jew, or he also wasn't a member of the family even, or a Jew, as the other way around. But he still guided Yosef to go to where his brothers were. And yes, it was a terrible event, but it eventually led to the redemption and formation of the Jewish people. So it can come from almost any source, any place. Give me 1 second. I just need to plug my computer in. Or it will not continue working. Okay. And we are good. Okay. Nice. Okay. So let's move on to the second section here. The Torah also says that you will continue to live in the land that is conducive to this type of spiritual elevation, namely the Holy Land, and that its bounty in its favorable or unfavorable state will be in the hands of God, commensurate, with your actions. So, another reward for performing the mitzvot is that we are not exiled away from our land, that we're able to stay in our land, in our country, and connected to our culture, to our people, to our language, to our environment. And when you take what's a plant that's very sensitive? An etrog. Let's take an etrog, for example. And you plant it in a garden that's conducive for the growth of that tree and the production of the fruit, where it'll have regular water and pruning and care, and that etrog tree will grow very easily and produce many etrogim. However, if you try to plant that etrog in other places, there will be challenges. It's not impossible, but there will be challenges. The amount of water, the pH of the soil, it'll be less conducive to grow that tree. Not impossible, but less easy. It'll be more challenging is what I mean to say, not less easy. The same thing with Am Yisrael and our way of life and the performance of mitzvot. Yeah, we can go anywhere in the world. We're very versatile people. We can speak any language. We can learn any culture. We can be amongst the goyim and have a very thriving diasporatic Judaism. But it's not what it would be if we were in the land of Israel, if we were in our garden with our soil, with our language, with our everything. The tree would flourish that much easier and that much more. So here, one of the rewards of performing the mitzvot is being able to do them in an environment where the environment is conducive to the performance of those mitzvot. Okay. And he says this. This is a very interesting statement. and we can see how we feel about this statement. Yeah. All the world will be guided by the laws of nature, except for you. You will see that when my divine presence is with you, your land will be bountiful, and your rainy seasons will never fluctuate from their required times. You will defeat your enemies, despite your small number. Again, he seems like he's quoting basically Parashat Bechukotai. In the Hebrew, he says, "Vayhinu het kol ha'olam kol haminhag hativi'i."
Rasha Hagodai.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Who's he quoting?
Bechukotai. It's a parasha. It's a parasha in the Torah.
Oh, okay.
Parashat Bechukotai. It means like if you follow my commandments, here are the blessings that you will have.
Gotcha.
If you don't, here are the curses.
Isn't that in the Shema?
So there's
Part of it.
also an aspect of this in the Shema as well. And we see here that something that's very interesting. He says that the rest of the world is run by the laws of nature, right? The thing with that is, it doesn't mean they're disconnected from God. Remember, we talked about this a while back, based off of the understanding of Chacham David Nieto in London, that God is nature. They're one and the same. There isn't an entity of nature, in Jewish thought anyways, there isn't an entity of nature that's separate from God that kind of just runs its course. According to the Hachamim, God is the direct cause of natural events. We say Meshiv HaRuach U'Mida Geshem. These are two separate events, but we see them as being interconnected, that the entire world is interconnected, and God is who is Manhig, meaning he's the one who rules it, runs it, drives it, he controls it. So what I think what is being said here, and I think it's very subtle, and I think I could be just reading too much into it, and you can tell me if I am, that because of the rest of the world doesn't have necessarily, I should say, not that they don't by guarantee, but necessarily have the relationship and understanding of God that the Jewish people do. And because of that, there's going to be this sense in the rest of the world that there is a war between man and nature, that we are at odds with nature, that nature is part of something out there to get us, and that we will have disasters and doom and all kinds of stuff. It's sort of like what we see now. It's not to say that there isn't natural disasters, that there are natural disasters. I'm not saying.
Joseph,
Yeah, go ahead.
you're jumping into point 3.
Yeah, I am jumping into point 3.
Okay.
But I'm clarifying what he's saying here by nature. That Am Yisrael is that we will not be ruled by nature, and that the non-Jews will be ruled by nature. It means that there is sort of like this mental divide, but it's only a mental divide. Whereas Am Yisrael, because of our karov, we're close to God, we're now in balance with the world around us, and because of that, we will try to balance ourselves with the natural world around us, and we will guide it in a way that is able to be done, and we will benefit from that. That's what I think he's saying here. That's why we're talking about the land being bountiful and the rainy seasons not fluctuating, that we understand the patterns of irrigation, like we understand how to use it for our benefit, because we don't see the world as being comprised of multiple gods that we have to appease. There's the rain god and the sun god and the wind god, and we have to make all of them happy in order to have good crops. No, the opposite. We have one God who controls all of these things, and what he desires is us to follow the Torah. Okay.
What you're saying is the equivalent of Gam Zu Tova. Whatever happens is good.
In a sense.
If you're close to God,
Yeah.
whatever happens comes from God.
Mhm.
Even if somebody might say, it doesn't look so good. What you're saying is when you're in balance with God, by being close to God, you see the quote bad as being good, as opposed to nature. You see the bad, you go, oh, this is terrible.
It's terrible.
I think, is that what you just said?
And it's a better way of saying what I just said. And it's something important here is like it's a mindset we're seeing.
Yeah.
We're seeing once again that the reward for living Torah is found here right now. We have physical benefits, and part of that is like in times of hardship that we see the blessing in that hardship also. Yes, exactly. We see gamzu toba, and we try to make the best of it.
Hashgacha pratis, it says so in the footnote.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, let's look at the footnote. In this context, nature means phenomenon that seem to occur arbitrarily, not as a reaction to man's behavior. In Jewish philosophy, this is known as hashgacha kelalit, or kalalis, or God's general providence, meaning in it's hard to give a good parable for it because all the parables are kind of mutually exclusive. They don't work all together as a unit, but in individual cases they work. Like there, in one case, you can say God is driving all the leaves to fall from the tree. Each leaf that falls, you can say fall, fall, fall. That's right, whatever. But in the sense of hashgacha klalit, God isn't standing over that tree saying, "Okay, this leaf fall. Okay, now that leaf. But no, this leaf can stay." That's we can't say it's too much work. God has nothing but time, but it's hard to kind of put those two together. But in the sense of hashgacha klalit, it doesn't mean that God is necessarily 100% involved in every single little thing that happens. And that when God is involved, it's because of the goodness of man, or because it's a reward for mankind. Okay, now, what time is it? Okay, 3. We can do this next one. We can do this next one for sure. So through all of this, yeah, you will see that you are not governed by normal laws of nature. Here in the Hebrew, it's a little different. It says, "Ein inyanchem noheg al minhag hativi'i," that you're not guided or you're not driven by some sort of entity of nature, is the way I would say it. Abal behefetz, but by desire, meaning God's desire, divine will. You will also perceive this if you rebel against me, as then my divine will shall be manifested by famine, plague, wild beasts that will strike at you while the rest of the world is in a state of prosperity. Then you'll understand that your affairs are governed by something bigger than nature. And this is a whole Mesechet in the Gemara and the Mishnah on this called Mesechet Ta'anit, the tractate of fasts. And that if a certain amount of rain hasn't fallen, we are supposed to take a national fast and blow shofar and read certain prayers and fast from a certain amount of time. And the more intense the drought is, the more intense our fast becomes. And this is in fact where the prayer Avinu Malkeinu comes from. Right? Avinu Malkeinu Chonenu Vanenu Ke'en Manu Ba'asim. This prayer was written by Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva went out on it was a fast day, and it was during a drought, and there was no rain. And he said, Avinu Malkeinu, right? Hanenu Ma'anenu. And by the time he got to the 5th word, it started to pour rain. And it was the idea of this is that by Rabbi Akiva's prayer was able to somehow influence the nature. It's more simple. It's not as simple as like some sort of magic spell or story that happened. It has to do with the idea that Rabbi Akiva was the Midrash is teaching us about what it means to do teshuvah, and that's more for another time that we should look at it. But I didn't move to the other page. Sorry. But it's just that one sentence. But here, and I see your hand, Yor. I'm just giving 1 second. Here we're seeing that the Jewish ethos here that he's presenting to the Kuzari is there is Gehinam, and there is Gan Eden and Olam Haba, whatever that is. But really, that's not the focus and drive of Torah. The focus and drive of the Torah is to make the world here better, to enjoy this world here, and to see hardship in this world as some sort of as related to us. that it's not, we're not just not helpless and without drive, but that God, we are connected to God in this world, and God hears us in this world and cares about our well-being in this world. Go ahead, Yoram.
Yeah, you went very fast on something that for me is one of the most important things in bitachon and emunah, trust and faith in Hashem. Oh, if the leaf doesn't fall, is God intervening or not? Now, I don't care as much about the leaf, but let's say somebody shoots somebody. Now, obviously, he did a murder and he should be punished. God could have intervened to save the person, and God sometimes chooses to save people. I was saved a few times, and I give credit to Hashem. Other people don't always get saved. And a lot of people even cannot comprehend it with a good God. Either you say God is busy doing something else, or God doesn't care. How come? Obviously, you as a person shouldn't pull the trigger. Clearly, you shouldn't. Now, God could have made it that you wouldn't have a bullet in the trigger, and the gun wouldn't work. But sometimes God does it. Most of the time, God doesn't intervene. How do you go with that issue of when does God choose to intervene? It's above my pay grade, but I have to admit I'm very troubled because when you see evil and people get killed, and you always say, where is Hashem? Is he busy somewhere else?
I hear. There isn't an answer to that. I mean, the idea of God's goodness and righteousness and justice is an interesting question. I remember I went to a shiur a few years ago, given by Rabbi Nathan Lopez Cordozo, and the name of his shiur was God is not righteous, God is not good. And the idea behind the shiur is that whatever word that you use to apply to God, it's incorrect. What is good? You think good is when it agrees with your sensibilities. Justice is when it agrees with your sensibilities. God is the true judge. When something bad happens, say Dayan ha'emet. And it's not to ritualize negative experiences. It's to recenter the mind, reorient the mind to accept reality around us and to understand I don't know everything. I'm not in charge of everything. So I said Dayan ha'emet in order to recognize this tragedy that I am experiencing, but to recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he is that, the Dayan ha'emet, and I have no control over that. I didn't merit, or this person didn't merit, or whatever the heshbon is, that's just the heshbon. Another way of looking at it, I mean, God is the author, right? And the author, he's a unique author in that his characters have free will. It's like he's writing the book. I mean, I think authors do say this sometimes anyways, that it's not that they're not really writing the book. It's more like the book is writing itself and they just take paper to pen. Authors don't intervene in the tragedies of their characters, but they can write the situation differently. It's hard to really give an answer for that because it's a question. The whole book of Job seemingly is calling God into question. Well, how could God allow this to happen to Job? But it's not. It's calling Job into question. It's calling Job into judgment. It's an examination of how we as human beings deal with such tragedies around us, and like what's the healthy and appropriate way to do so. All right.
Yoram, I think your question is the ultimate question of religion. And I think it gets to, do I believe in God or not? And I have all the same problems with it you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult. It's definitely difficult. I don't have a
Well, many of my friends, when we have this discussion, and Mark, I can't wait for you to come. We'll do it one-on-one at the J. But like, let's say I believe that there is a creator, because I don't believe this amazing world But, people say either God is indifferent, busy creating other worlds, doesn't get involved in our daily life. And if he does, he and goodness, the way we define goodness, that's why we say Shana Tova Metuka. Every year is a good year from God's perspective. We like it to be sweet, and the sweet is our perspective. Don't tell me I lost my leg in a car accident. It was a good year. From God's perspective, it was a good year. And even if I don't like it and don't understand it, and Corona year was a great year, was a good year, because no Jewish person would say a year from God is not a good year. I just say I didn't like it, that I couldn't travel. I didn't like it that many of my friends, few died and few ended in the hospital, in intensive care unit. I didn't like it. But it was a good year. I'm not there, I have to admit, and you and I would talk about it, but that's the ultimate question.
Yep, agreed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yoram. Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Comments, questions, complaints, concerns? Good observations, bad observations?
We want it to be a good and sweet, Yosef. Good is not enough. I like sweet.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It was good to be back. I'm glad to learn with you all again. It was very invigorating for me, and I'm happy to hear everybody, to see everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane and Anne and Eleanor and Mark and Tamir and Irene and Yoram and Carol. And thank you to the Bima, who's been here the whole time. And
So next week, we'll start our third week in paragraph 109.
yes, we'll, I think next week we won't even finish it then. It's a long paragraph. So, all right. Tov me'od,
And I'll
everybody.
be in Tucson.
Hi, Baruch Hashem. I'll be excited to see you when you get here.
Yep, looking forward to it.
All right. Be well. Have a good day.
Safe,
See ya.
safe travel, Mark.